There are moments in life when we encounter certain signs subtle, persistent, or even overwhelming that we may not fully understand. Yet these signs are not coincidental. They are deliberate nudges, divine signals designed to grab our attention, often in ways that words cannot. You see, God doesn't always speak in a booming voice from the heavens. Sometimes He uses situations, people, and internal stirrings to communicate with us. When you feel an unsettling stirring deep within your spirit, it's easy to dismiss it as anxiety, stress, or simple indecision. But more often than not, that disturbance is something far more significant. It is the voice of God gently nudging you, urging you to pay attention. This feeling is not random. It serves as a critical sign, a divine signal that something in your life is misaligned with His purpose. You see, God's voice doesn't always manifest in grand, miraculous ways. Rarely will you hear an audible command or see a blinding light. More frequently, God communicates through the subtleties of your inner life. That unrest you feel, that persistent tug at your heart, is His way of drawing your attention to a situation, decision, or behavior that needs to be addressed. Consider for a moment how often we ignore this internal warning system. We become so consumed by the busyness of our daily routines, by the pressures of work, family, and personal ambitions, that we push aside the very signs meant to protect us. We rationalize away our discomfort, convincing ourselves that it's just a phase or that we'll deal with it later. But the more we ignore that spiritual signal, the louder it becomes. That feeling of uneasiness doesn't go away, it intensifies. And if left unchecked, it can lead to turmoil in other areas of your life emotionally, mentally, and even physically. What God is trying to do through this internal disturbance is invite you into a conversation with Him. He's trying to get you to pause, to step away from the distractions, and to come to Him with a heart that's ready to listen. The unrest is not a punishment, it's a prompt for reflection. God is saying something here isn't right, and I need you to pay attention. Take a moment and think about the times when you've experienced that deep sense of unease. Was it before making a big decision, such as taking a job, entering into a relationship, or making a significant financial commitment? Or maybe it was when you stayed in a situation that you knew wasn't good for you, but you didn't want to face the consequences of change. That feeling wasn't just anxiety, it was God tapping you on the shoulder, urging you to reconsider your steps. It's as if your spirit knows, before your mind can fully comprehend, that you're walking in a direction that doesn't align with God's plan. This inner conviction is one of the most profound ways God communicates with us. The Bible tells us that the Holy Spirit serves as our counselor, guiding us into all truth. One of the Spirit's roles is to alert us when we are drifting off course, to bring to our attention the areas of our lives that need adjustment. But for this system to work, we have to be willing to listen and respond. Many people struggle to differentiate between genuine spiritual unrest and the general stresses of life. The key lies in your ability to discern the source of your discomfort. Spiritual unrest often comes with a sense of clarity. Even if the details of what you need to do are not immediately clear, there's an unmistakable conviction that something must change. It's a feeling that goes beyond surface-level anxiety. It penetrates to the core of your being, quietly but persistently calling you to make a shift. Ignoring this warning doesn't make it go away. In fact, the longer you resist it, the more it disrupts your peace. You may notice that your sleep becomes restless, your mind unsettled, and your ability to focus is diminished. This is because God is not going to let you stay comfortable in a situation that leads you away from Him or from the purpose He has designed for your life. He loves you too much to let you walk down a path of destruction without ending. But His intervention often comes in the form of that quiet inner stirring, that nagging feeling that something is amiss. The challenge for many of us is that we fear what change might require. We resist the inner call to reflect and adjust because we're comfortable with the status quo. But staying in a state of spiritual unrest is far more detrimental than the discomfort of making necessary changes. When God stirs your spirit, He's inviting you into a deeper relationship with Him, one where trust and obedience are paramount. He's asking you to let go of what is familiar, even if it feels safe, and to step into the unknown, trusting that He has something better for you on the other side. So when you feel that unease rise up within you, don't push it aside. Don't distract yourself with more work, entertainment, or social obligations. Instead, take the time to get quiet, to sit with God, and ask Him what He's trying to say. Seek His wisdom, not only through prayer, but also by diving into His Word, which often holds the answers you're looking for. Remember that inner disturbance is a divine gift. It's a warning system designed to protect you, to guide you, and to keep you aligned with God's purpose for your life. Trust the process, listen carefully, and respond in faith. God is not trying to harm you. He's guiding you toward a life of greater peace, fulfillment, and divine alignment. There are moments in life when we hit roadblocks that seem insurmountable. We plan, prepare, and move forward with great expectation, only to find doors slammed shut, opportunities slipping away, and our best efforts producing little to no results. It's easy to feel frustrated and question why things aren't working out the way we had hoped. In times like these, we often see obstacles as setbacks, delays, or even failures. But what if these very obstacles were, in fact, divine interventions? What if they were God's way of redirecting us towards something better, something more aligned with His perfect plan for our lives? Many people mistakenly believe that when they encounter resistance, it's a sign that they should push harder or try to force things into place. While perseverance is important, not all resistance is meant to be overcome by sheer force. There are moments when roadblocks are strategically placed in our path to protect us, to prevent us from going down a road that may lead to harm, or to guide us toward a purpose that we have yet to see. When God places obstacles in our way, it is not because He wants to punish us or see us fail. On the contrary, His actions are always motivated by love, and sometimes love means saying no or not yet. These moments of resistance are divine detours, God's way of shifting our direction to ensure that we are walking in the fullness of His plan. What we perceive as rejection or failure may actually be divine protection. Think about it. There have been times in your life when, despite your best efforts, things simply didn't work out the way you intended. Perhaps you didn't get the job you thought you were perfect for, or a relationship ended unexpectedly. In those moments, it's natural to feel disappointment, even frustration, but hindsight often reveals a bigger picture. You may come to realize that the job you didn't get would have led to stress and unhappiness, or that the relationship wasn't as fulfilling as you had hoped. What felt like a loss at the time was actually a redirection, God moving you away from something that wasn't right for you and towards something that was. It's important to understand that God sees the entire landscape of our lives in ways that we cannot. We have a limited, narrow view of the present moment, but God sees the future, the potential consequences of our actions, and the ripple effects of the choices we make. He knows what's best for us, and sometimes what's best requires a change in direction that we may not initially understand. The challenge for many of us is learning to trust that God is in control. Even when things don't go according to our plans, we have to be willing to let go of the need to control every outcome and instead lean into the truth that God's plan is always better than ours. When we face a roadblock, it's not a time to push harder out of stubbornness or frustration. It's a time to pause, reflect, and ask, what is God trying to teach me in this moment? What new direction is He calling me to take? Sometimes roadblocks are also a way for God to teach us patience. We live in a fast-paced world where instant gratification is the norm. We expect things to happen quickly, and when they don't, we grow impatient. But God's timing is not our timing. He may be saying, wait, the time is not right yet, or there's something you need to learn before you move forward. In these moments, the obstacle is not meant to be overcome, but to serve as a reminder that growth often requires time, and we need to trust in God's process. Moreover, these roadblocks can also be opportunities for growth and refinement. When things don't go as planned, we are forced to examine our motives, our desires, and our dependence on God. Obstacles have a way of stripping away our illusions of control and reminding us of our need for divine guidance. They humble us, bring us back to a place of dependence on God, and create opportunities for us to realign our lives with His will. It's also possible that the roadblock is a test of faith. God may be asking, will you trust me even when things aren't going your way? Will you continue to walk with me when the path is difficult and unclear? It's in these moments of uncertainty that our faith is stretched and strengthened. True faith isn't about trusting God when everything is easy and smooth. It's about trusting Him when we're faced with challenges, when we can't see the way forward, and when the future feels uncertain. In the end, every obstacle, every closed door, and every delay serves a purpose in God's grand design. Our job is not to force our way through or become discouraged by the resistance. Instead, we are called to seek God's wisdom, to pray for clarity, and to remain open to His leading. He may be redirecting us towards something greater than we could have imagined, or He may be protecting us from something we cannot yet see. So the next time you encounter a roadblock, take a moment to pause and reflect. Don't see it as a sign of failure or defeat. Instead, recognize it for what it truly is: a divine intervention, a loving detour, guiding you back to the path that God has prepared for you. Trust that He is working all things together for your good, even when the way forward isn't immediately clear. Absolutely. One of the most significant ways God communicates with us is through the people we encounter. These relationships, whether fleeting acquaintances or long-lasting connections, often serve as divine instruments in shaping our lives. God, in His infinite wisdom, uses the people around us to guide, instruct, encourage, or sometimes even warn us when we are veering off course. But it's not always easy to recognize this. Often we miss the signs because we don't pay close enough attention to the kinds of influences these people bring into our lives. You see, relationships can either pull us closer to God's plan or push us away from it. One key sign that God may be warning you is when certain people around you start exhibiting behaviors or attitudes that conflict with your values, faith, and the path you know God has set for you. These individuals may be well-meaning, but if they're leading you into situations that compromise your integrity or distract you from your purpose, this is a clear indication that something is not right. There's a principle in Scripture that tells us iron sharpens iron. This means that the people in your life should be those who encourage your growth, challenge you to be better, and help you stay focused on your spiritual and personal development. But if the people you surround yourself with are constantly drawing you into gossip, negativity, destructive habits, or discouraging you from pursuing your dreams and God's will for your life, it's time to reevaluate. God may be using these situations to send you a message. It's time to step back from these influences and realign yourself with His truth. One clear example of this is when you begin to notice that the people you're closest to don't support the changes or growth you're trying to achieve. Have you ever found yourself excited about a new direction in life, whether it's a new career, a deeper relationship with God, or simply a personal goal only to be met with negativity, skepticism, or even outright discouragement from those you thought would be your biggest supporters? This is a critical moment of awareness. God could be revealing to you that not everyone in your circle is meant to go where He's taking you. Sometimes relationships run their course. People who were once aligned with your journey may no longer fit the direction God is leading you. It's not necessarily that they're bad people, but their season in your life may be coming to an end. This can be difficult to accept, especially when you have a deep emotional connection with someone, but part of spiritual maturity is recognizing when it's time to let go. If someone in your life is consistently pulling you away from your focus on God, your purpose, or your growth, it's a sign that God is asking you to create some distance. Now, that doesn't mean we're meant to sever every relationship that isn't perfect. Relationships take work, and God may use you to positively influence those around you as well. However, you must discern the difference between healthy challenges and toxic patterns. When people continually bring negativity, doubt, or lead you into harmful behaviors, it's a sign that their influence may not be from God. He could be using their presence as a mirror to show you where boundaries need to be set, where your energy should no longer be invested, and where you need to protect your spiritual and emotional health. Another sign to look for is when you feel a sense of heaviness or conflict after spending time with certain individuals. Pay attention to how you feel internally after interactions with the people in your life. If you leave their presence feeling drained, confused, or in emotional turmoil, that is not a coincidence. God may be using those feelings to warn you that this relationship is no longer serving His plan for you. There's a big difference between being challenged by someone in a way that promotes growth and being constantly drained by someone's negative energy. This emotional toll is often a sign that God is asking you to distance yourself from that influence. Sometimes the warning comes not from the negativity of others, but from how much they distract you from what's important. Have you ever been so consumed with social activities, conversations, or even trying to please others that you lose track of your own spiritual disciplines or personal goals? Distraction is one of the enemy's most subtle tactics. People who consistently pull your focus away from your relationship with God, your values, or your personal growth, even if it's unintentional, are signals that you need to pay attention. God may be trying to get you to refocus by pointing out the distractions these relationships are creating. You may also find that some people simply stop being available when you're moving towards something God has called you to do. This can feel painful, but it's often a sign that God is pruning relationships for a reason. He may be removing people who are not meant to journey with you into the next phase of your life. Rather than chasing after them or feeling hurt by their absence, consider that this might be God's way of making room for the right people who will support and encourage the next steps of your journey. The key to navigating these relationships is discernment. God doesn't just remove people from your life without providing the wisdom to handle these changes. If you find yourself questioning someone's role in your life, take it to prayer. Ask God for clarity, for peace about the relationships that need to end, and for the strength to move forward with grace. Trust that when He removes certain people from your life, He's also making space for those who are meant to lift you higher, sharpen your faith, and align with your purpose. In the end, every relationship serves a purpose. But when the purpose has been fulfilled, God may be sending you a clear sign to move on, to guard your heart, and to focus on the path He has set before you. Trust the process. And know that God is always working for your good, even in the relationships He asks you to release. When you experience an overwhelming sense of unease deep within your spirit, it is often a clear sign that something is not in alignment with God's plan for your life. This internal discomfort, sometimes subtle and other times undeniable, is one of the most powerful ways that God communicates with us. It's not the kind of physical discomfort we can easily pinpoint, like a headache or a stomachache, but rather a spiritual disquiet, an inner stirring that alerts us when we are on the wrong path. It can manifest as a persistent feeling that something is off, even when on the surface everything seems to be in order. Many people tend to ignore this feeling, dismissing it as anxiety or nervousness, and they push forward with their plans, believing that time or persistence will resolve the unease. However, this inner stirring is often God's way of warning you. It is the Holy Spirit nudging you to pay attention, to reconsider your decisions, or to take a step back. Ignoring this inner disquiet can lead to distressing consequences, because it is God trying to protect you from harm or from straying too far off course. The Bible tells us that God speaks to us in many ways through His Word, through people, and through our inner spirit. That deep feeling of unrest is one of the clearest ways He gets our attention when we are not listening to the other signs. It's important to note that this discomfort is not the same as fear. Fear is often based on external circumstances, a reaction to what we perceive in the world around us. The unease I'm talking about is an internal warning, a discomfort that persists no matter how much we try to reason it away or suppress it with distractions. For example, have you ever been in a situation where you were about to make a major decision, whether it was about a relationship, a job opportunity, or a move, and something just didn't feel right? Despite all the logical reasons to proceed, there was this nagging feeling in your spirit telling you to stop, to reconsider, or to wait. That's God speaking to you, trying to protect you from making a mistake that could have long-term consequences. But too often, we ignore this internal warning because we want what we want, and we convince ourselves that the discomfort will go away once we achieve our goal. Ignoring this feeling of unease can lead to regret later on. How many times have you heard people say, "I knew something was off, but I didn't listen to that feeling"? It's a common experience. We push forward with our own agenda, thinking we know best, only to find ourselves facing unnecessary pain or hardship because we ignored that still small voice inside of us. God is always trying to guide us, but He will not force His will upon us. He gives us the freedom to choose. And when we choose to ignore His guidance, we often end up walking into situations that He was trying to protect us from. This sense of inner unease can also be a sign that something is wrong spiritually, that we are drifting away from God's presence. When we live in alignment with God's will, there is a sense of peace that surpasses understanding, a calm that anchors us even in difficult times. But when we begin to step out of that alignment, that peace begins to fade, and we are left with a feeling of unrest. This is not a punishment from God. It's a signal to bring us back into alignment, to draw us closer to Him. It's a loving reminder that we are straying from the path He has set for us. One of the most important things we can do when we feel this inner discomfort is to pause and seek God's direction. Instead of pushing through the unease, hoping it will resolve itself, we need to take a step back and ask God, "What are you trying to show me? What do I need to pay attention to right now?" This kind of reflection requires humility, the willingness to set aside our own plans and desires in favor of seeking God's will. It's not easy, especially when we're eager to move forward, but it's essential if we want to avoid making decisions that lead us further away from His plan. In some cases, this feeling of unease may be God's way of telling you that a door you are trying to open is not meant for you. You might be pursuing a relationship that looks perfect on the surface, but deep down, you know something is not right. Or perhaps you're chasing a career opportunity that seems like the dream job, but your spirit is unsettled. When you feel this discomfort, it's important to trust that God sees what you cannot see. He knows what lies ahead, and He is trying to keep you from stepping into a situation that could bring harm, disappointment, or spiritual decline. It's also possible that this inner disquiet is a sign that God is calling you to make a change. Sometimes we get too comfortable in situations that no longer serve our growth or purpose. We stay in jobs, relationships, or environments because they are familiar, even though they no longer align with God's plan for us. That feeling of unease is God's way of stirring us up, pushing us to move into a new season, to step out in faith and trust that He has something better in store for us. Ultimately, the unease you feel in your spirit is not something to fear or ignore. It is a gift, a divine warning that is meant to protect you, guide you, and keep you on the path that God has designed for your life. The key is to listen, to take it seriously, and to seek God's wisdom in how to respond. Whether He's asking you to slow down, change direction, or step away from something entirely, trusting in that inner discomfort can save you from unnecessary hardship and lead you toward the peace and fulfillment that comes from living in alignment with His will. So the next time you feel that unsettling stir in your spirit, don't dismiss it. Pay attention. God is speaking to you, guiding you, and asking you to trust His way. His warnings are never to harm you, but to keep you safe, protect your heart, and ensure that you live out the full potential He has designed for you. God sometimes uses persistent obstacles or disruptions to get our attention. When things in your life seem to go awry for no apparent reason, when roadblocks suddenly appear, or circumstances keep taking unexpected turns, these could very well be signs that God is trying to communicate something important to you. It can feel frustrating when our plans are constantly interrupted, especially when we are convinced we're heading in the right direction. However, rather than seeing these disruptions as mere annoyances, we need to recognize them as potential signals from God that we are either not on the right path or that there is something we need to adjust. It's easy to assume that obstacles are just random occurrences or unfortunate events that happen along the way. But in the grand scheme of God's plan for our lives, nothing is random. Every setback, every delay, and every challenge is permitted by God for a reason. Sometimes He uses these disruptions to slow us down so we can reflect, seek His guidance, and realign ourselves with His will. This is often difficult to accept because we live in a culture that values constant movement, progress, and productivity. When things don't go according to plan, we tend to get anxious, frustrated, or even angry, failing to recognize that God might be intervening for our own good. One example of this could be found in situations where no matter how hard you try, certain doors just won't open. You apply for the perfect job and you're rejected. You pursue a promising relationship, but it falls apart. You invest time and energy into a project only for it to fail. These experiences can be disheartening, but instead of pushing harder or becoming discouraged, this might be a moment to stop and ask God, what are you trying to tell me? When you face repeated obstacles, it's often a signal that God is either protecting you from something you cannot see or redirecting you towards something far better. Sometimes we pursue our goals with such tunnel vision that we become blinded to the bigger picture. We become so fixated on what we want that we forget to ask if it aligns with what God wants for us. Obstacles are often His way of interrupting our plans to get us to stop and listen. Maybe that job you didn't get would have led you into a toxic work environment. Perhaps that relationship that didn't work out would have distracted you from your true purpose. Or maybe the business venture that failed was not in line with God's ultimate plan for your life. Whatever the case, God's interruptions are never without purpose. They are designed to save us from harm or guide us into something more in line with His will. Another way that obstacles serve as divine signals is by testing our faith and patience. We often think that the path to success, whether in our careers, relationships, or spiritual lives, should be smooth if we're doing things right. But the truth is, God allows difficulties and delays to develop our character. He might be using these disruptions to teach us patience, perseverance, or trust in His timing. When everything is going well, it's easy to think that we're in control. But when roadblocks appear, we're forced to lean on God, to trust that He knows best, and to surrender our plans to His wisdom. Take a moment to reflect on the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. They spent 40 years wandering, facing obstacles at every turn. What they saw as delays, God used as a means of shaping their character, teaching them to depend on Him, and preparing them for the promised land. In the same way, the obstacles you face may not be there to punish or frustrate you, but to prepare you for something greater. Every delay is an opportunity for growth, every disruption a chance to deepen your trust in God's perfect timing. One of the hardest things for us to accept is that sometimes God's plan includes seasons of waiting and challenges. We want things to happen now, and when they don't, we assume that something is wrong. But in those moments, God might be using the obstacles to test our readiness. Sometimes we're not as prepared as we think we are. If God were to give us everything we ask for immediately, we might not have the strength, wisdom, or maturity to handle it. The obstacles we face are often a way for God to refine us, to build the skills and the resilience we'll need for the next level of our journey. Furthermore, disruptions can also signal that we need to take a different path altogether. If you've been pursuing something with all your might and keep hitting roadblocks, it might be time to ask yourself if this is truly God's will for your life. It can be hard to let go of something you've invested in. But sometimes the greatest act of faith is to surrender your plans and allow God to redirect you. He sees the whole picture when we only see a part. Trusting that He knows what's best for us, even when it means letting go of something we deeply desire, is a powerful step toward living in alignment with His purpose. God's disruptions often come disguised as failure or disappointment, but they are really opportunities for redirection, growth, and deeper faith. The next time you encounter an obstacle, rather than fighting it, take a step back. Pray for clarity. Ask God if this is a signal that you need to change direction, adjust your approach, or simply wait for His timing. He might be closing a door to open a better one, or He might be using the challenge to prepare you for something far greater than you can imagine. In moments of disruption, remember that God's ways are higher than our ways. He is never surprised by the setbacks we encounter. He uses them as part of the process of bringing us into the fullness of the destiny He has planned for us. Every obstacle is an invitation to trust Him more, to rely less on our own understanding, and to surrender fully to His will. When you face roadblocks, it's not a time to give up, but a time to press in closer to God, seeking His wisdom and guidance in every step you take. So, when you find yourself dealing with persistent obstacles, know that God might be warning you, guiding you, or shaping you for something far greater. Instead of resisting the disruptions, embrace them as a vital part of the journey toward your God-given purpose. Trust that He is working all things together for your good, even in the midst of the challenges you face. In conclusion, when you notice these signs, persistent inner discomfort, the repetition of negative patterns, a spiritual distance, or recurring obstacles and disruptions, it's essential to recognize them as warnings from God. These signs are not random occurrences or moments of misfortune. They are divine signals, urging you to pause, reflect, and realign with His purpose for your life. Ignoring them may lead to unnecessary pain, regret, or setbacks, but when you pay attention and seek His guidance, you allow yourself to be directed toward a better path, one filled with peace, purpose, and alignment with God's will. Trust that God's warnings, though sometimes uncomfortable, are rooted in His love and desire to lead you toward the fullness of life He has planned for you. Stay attuned to these signals, seek clarity through prayer, and always be open to the direction He provides.